It wasn't long. Just one paragraph. You taught me that love has conditions. That family means utility. That my value was in what I could provide, not who I was. You erased me, used me, and discarded me. But you also taught me something else. You taught me that I'm stronger than you ever believed. That I can survive without you. That chosen family matters more than blood. That justice, even quiet justice, is worth fighting for. I forgive myself for trusting you. I forgive myself for staying too long. I forgive myself for believing your lies. But I don't forgive you. Not yet. Maybe not ever. And that's okay. Because forgiveness isn't required for freedom. My father's face went red, then pale. He crumpled the paper in his fist. My mother put a hand over her mouth. My brother stood up so fast his chair scraped across the floor. You think you're better than us. You think. That's enough, their lawyer said, grabbing my brother's arm. The agreement includes no contact. Starting now. Nina gathered our copies of the signed settlement. We're done here. Funds will transfer within 48 hours as specified. Any questions, go through me. We walked out without looking back. In the hallway, Nina said, that letter wasn't in our agreement. I know. I needed to say it anyway. How do you feel? Thought about it. Empty. But like, good empty. Like I cleaned out a closet that was full of broken things I kept thinking I'd fix someday. That's normal. Closure doesn't always feel like closure right away. We walked to the parking garage, our footsteps echoing in the concrete space. The IRS is filing charges next week, Nina said. Tax fraud, multiple counts. I got the heads up this morning. Your family's lawyer is probably telling them right now. Will they go to prison? Maybe. Probably fines, probation, monitored restitution. But it'll follow them forever. Every job application, every credit check, every time someone Googles their names. The weight of that settled over me. Not satisfaction exactly. Just resolution. The kind that comes from knowing consequences finally caught up. Thank you, I said. For believing me. For fighting with me. For seeing me when they spent years making me invisible. Nina smiled, the real kind. That's my job. Well, part of it. The other part is watching people like you reclaim their power. That's the good part. We said goodbye in the garage. Professional handshake that felt like more. Like closing one chapter and acknowledging another was starting. I drove home in afternoon traffic, the settlement papers on my passenger seat. $700,000 was being transferred to an account only I controlled. Money that represented 10 years of stolen labor, stolen identity, stolen peace. It wouldn't buy back those years. Wouldn't erase the bruises or the debt or the nights I went hungry so I could pay their bills. But it would buy a future. My future. On my terms. That night I ordered pizza. Real pizza, not the frozen kind. Sat on my floor because my furniture was still mostly second-hand and falling apart. Ate straight from the box because I didn't want to dirty dishes. And I laughed. Real, honest, ridiculous laughter at the absurdity of it all. Of fighting your own family in court. Of winning. Of sitting alone in a shabby apartment eating pizza like it was a victory feast. As it was. The next morning my bank account showed the transfer. $700,000 and 47 cents. I stared at the number for a solid 5 minutes. Refreshed the page to make sure it was real. It was real. I paid off my debts first. The credit cards they'd maxed out in my name. The loans I co-signed. The collections accounts I'd been dodging. Clicked buttons, watched numbers go down, felt weight lift. Then I did something I hadn't done in 10 years. I bought groceries without checking prices. Filled my cart with fresh vegetables and good coffee and ice cream that wasn't store brand. Stood in line not worrying about whether my card would decline. The cashier said, "How's your day going?" "Actually," I said, surprising myself, "it's going pretty good." Back home I put groceries away and noticed how quiet the apartment was. Not oppressive quiet like before. Just peaceful. My phone sat on the counter silent. No angry calls. No guilt trip texts. No emergencies that weren't really emergencies. Just silence. And for once, silence felt like safety. But there was one more thing I needed to do. Chapter 10. The IRS notification came 6 weeks after I signed the settlement. Not to me, I wasn't part of that investigation anymore. But Nina called me the morning after it happened. They're being audited. Full forensic audit going back 10 years. Criminal investigation is officially open. Her voice had that satisfied edge. I thought you'd want to know. I was in my new apartment. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. Actually mine. Lease in my name only. Security deposit I could afford without panic. A neighborhood where I didn't jump at every sound. What does that mean for them? Means the bill is due. And the IRS doesn't negotiate the way we did. They want every dollar, every explanation, every piece of documentation. Your family built a house of cards with taxpayer money. Now they're watching it collapse. I walked to my window. 3rd floor, facing a small park where kids were playing. Normal life happening like it always does, regardless of who's fighting battles behind closed doors. My father called me yesterday, I said. From a number I didn't have blocked. Nina's voice sharpened. What did he say? Nothing. I didn't answer. But he left a voicemail. I pulled up my phone, stared at the notification. Haven't listened to it yet. Do you want to? Did I? Part of me was curious. Part of me didn't care. Part of me was scared it would pull me back into patterns I'd worked hard to break. Maybe later. Or maybe never. I don't know if it matters anymore. It doesn't have to matter, Nina said gently. You don't owe them your attention just because they demand it. After we hung up, I sat with my coffee. Good coffee, the kind I used to think was too expensive, and thought about that voicemail. 3 months ago, I would have listened immediately. Would have dissected every word for hidden meaning. Would have called back, tried to fix things, taken responsibility for their feelings. Now I could just let it sit there. A notification I might delete without ever hearing. That felt like growth. My phone buzzed. A text from Angela, my father's former secretary. We'd been talking occasionally since she sent me that screenshot. She'd quit 2 weeks after the first hearing, couldn't stomach watching them anymore. Just saw the IRS agents at the office. 3 of them. Boxes of documents being removed. Thought you should know it's real. I texted back a simple thank you with a heart emoji. She responded. You did the right thing. Hardest thing, but the right thing. I wasn't sure I agreed. Right and hard aren't always the same thing. Sometimes the right thing destroys you. Sometimes doing the hard thing is just survival, not virtue. But I was still here. Still breathing. Still building a life that didn't include them. That had to count for something. The news article appeared 3 days later. Not front page. Family tax fraud rarely is. But page 6 of the business section. Local construction company faces federal tax evasion charges. I read it in a coffee shop, surrounded by strangers who didn't know my story. The article was clinical, factual. Mentioned my father's name, the business, the amount allegedly evaded. Nearly $2 million over 8 years. $2 million. And they couldn't spare $700,000 for the daughter who helped build it. If you think the declined card meant I was broke, you're wrong. I was just done paying for people who hit me, stole from me, and called it love. Stay till the end, because this time the bill they get won't be from me. It'll be from the IRS. Chapter 1. The judge leaned forward, his eyes narrowing as he scanned the courtroom. Then he paused, his gaze landing on me like a spotlight I never asked for. Wait, he whispered to the clerk beside him, loud enough that the silence carried it across the room. Is that really her? I stood there, frozen. My mother's eyes rolled skyward, dismissing me like I was some annoying commercial interrupting her favorite show. My father wouldn't even look up. He stared at his hands like they held answers to questions no one was asking. The air in that courtroom felt thick, suffocating. Every person in that room looked at me like I was a glitch in their perfectly programmed system. Because according to the papers, according to the records, according to everyone who mattered, I didn't exist. My name is Sienna Rowe. I'm 32 years old. And for the last decade, I've been the invisible woman in my own life story. You know that moment when your card declines at the register? That embarrassing second when everyone behind you sighs and shifts their weight. When the cashier gives you that look that says they've seen this movie before. That happened to me 6 months ago. But here's what nobody knew. I wasn't broke. That decline card was the most expensive purchase I ever made because what I bought with it was my freedom. Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. See, that card declined because I finally closed the account. The one they used. The one they controlled. The one that paid for their mistakes while I collected bruises and called it love. 4 years I was the family ATM. The emergency fund. The cosigner on loans I never saw a penny from. The name on debts I didn't create. When my brother needed bail money at 3 in the morning, guess whose account got drained? When my mother's shopping addiction maxed out her credit cards, guess whose credit got ruined as backup? I carried their financial sins like a second skeleton inside my body. Heavy, hidden, hurting with every step. But the money was just the surface. Underneath there were the bruises. The ones my ex-boyfriend left that I covered with long sleeves in summer. The ones my father's words left that no makeup could hide. The ones my mother pretended not to see because acknowledging them would mean admitting she chose silence over her daughter. I stayed quiet because I thought love meant sacrifice. I thought family meant carrying weight until your bones cracked. I thought if I just paid one more bill, signed one more paper, forgave one more time, they'd finally see me. Really see me. Instead, they erased me. The courtroom that day wasn't supposed to be dramatic. I was there for what my lawyer called a simple tax dispute. The IRS had some questions about income one allegedly didn't report. Income from a family business I helped build with my own hands, my own late nights, my own ideas that got stolen and stamped with someone else's signature. But when I walked in, ready to defend myself, I realized the dispute wasn't simple at all. It was surgical, calculated. They'd cut me out of the family business paperwork years ago, erased my name from contracts, deleted my contributions like I was a rough draft they revised out of existence. My lawyer, a tired man named Gerald who smelled like old coffee and gave up on caring years ago, whispered, "They're saying you were never officially part of the company. No records. No proof." I felt my stomach drop. "That's impossible. I was there. I built." "I know," he said, his voice flat. "But paper doesn't lie. And their paper says you're a ghost." The prosecutor stood up, a woman in a sharp suit with sharper eyes. She laid out the case like she was reading a grocery list. Tax evasion, fraudulent claims, unpaid debts. And somehow, through legal magic I still don't fully understand, they'd made it look like I was the one who'd been stealing. From myself. My mother sat 3 rows back, whispering to my aunt. I caught fragments. Always dramatic. Never could keep her life together. Probably lying again. My father sat beside her, silent as stone. The man who taught me to ride a bike. The man who used to call me his little fighter. Now he couldn't even fight the urge to look away. That's when the judge leaned forward. That's when he said those words that cracked something open inside me. Is that really her? Because even he had trouble believing I existed. The woman in the photos they'd submitted, corporate headshots, family portraits, business documents, she looked like me. But in every single one, my face had been cropped out, blurred, or replaced. They'd photoshopped me out of my own history. I wanted to scream. I wanted to flip tables like I was in some movie where justice came with a soundtrack and a slow-motion walk away from explosions. But I just stood there, my hands shaking, my voice caught somewhere between my heart and my throat. "Your Honor," I finally said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I can prove I exist. I can prove everything." The judge studied me for a long moment. Then he looked at the stack of documents, the photos, the lawyer's smug face across the aisle. "If what you're saying is true, Ms. Rowe," he said slowly, each word deliberate, "then you've been erased. Not just forgotten. Erased. And if someone went through that much trouble to make you disappear." He paused, letting the weight of it settle over the courtroom like fog. "Then we need to find out why." Chapter 2. The bruises started small. Not the physical ones, those came later. I'm talking about the invisible kind. The ones that form when someone you love looks right through you like you're made of glass. Like you're already a ghost before they even start the paperwork. I was 22 when I met Marcus. He had this smile that made you forget to ask questions. The kind of charm that felt like sunshine until you realized you were getting burned. Our first date, he forgot his wallet. "I'm so sorry, babe. I'll get you back, I promise." Paid. Thought it was cute. Thought it was just bad timing. Second date, same thing. Third date, his card declined. By the 6th month, I wasn't even surprised anymore when his emergencies became my goods. "Just this once," he'd say, his hand on my cheek. His eyes doing that thing that made my logic shut down. "I'm waiting on a big check. You know I'm good for it." He was never good for it. But I kept paying, kept believing. Because love is supposed to mean showing up, right? Love is supposed to mean being there when things get hard. Nobody tells you that sometimes love is just a pretty word people use when they mean ATM. The first time he hit me, I made excuses for him. He was stressed about work. He didn't mean it. He apologized with flowers and tears and promises that felt real enough to believe. The second time I made excuses for myself. Maybe I pushed too hard. Maybe I should have been more understanding. Maybe if I just loved him better, he'd stop hurting me. By the 5th time I stopped counting. I just started wearing long sleeves. My mother noticed once. We were having lunch at her country club, the kind of place where everything is beige and everyone pretends their lives are perfect. She reached across the table, pulled up my sleeve before I could stop her. The bruise was yellow-green. healing but still obvious. Sienna, she said, her voice low. Not concerned. Annoyed. Like I'd spilled wine on her white tablecloth. People will talk. Not, are you okay? Not, who did this to you? Just, people will talk. Pulled my sleeve down. It's nothing. Good, she said, cutting her salad with surgical precision. Keep it that way. That's when I learned the family rule. Image matters more than truth. Silence costs less than scandal. So I stayed silent. I stayed silent when Marcus moved into my apartment and never paid rent. I stayed silent when he used my credit cards and forgot to pay them back. I stayed silent when my brother called at midnight needing bail money again. And my parents expected me to handle it because, you're good with money, Sienna. I wasn't good with money. I was just good at carrying other people's debts. My father started his construction business when I was 16. Small jobs at first. Kitchen renovations, bathroom remodels, the kind of work that kept food on the table but didn't make headlines. I was the one who built his website. Taught myself HTML in the library after school because we couldn't afford to hire someone. I designed his logo on free software. Printed flyers at Kinko's with my babysitting money. When clients called, I answered. When invoices needed sending, I sent them. When he needed someone to run errands, manage schedules, sweet-talk angry customers, I did it all. You're my right hand, he'd say, ruffling my hair like I was still a kid. Don't know what I'd do without you. By the time I was 25, that small business had grown into something real. Contracts with real companies. Projects worth 6 figures. My ideas turned into profit margins. But my name never made it onto the paperwork. It's complicated, my father said when I asked. Business stuff. Legal things. You wouldn't understand. I understood fine. I just didn't understand why understanding wasn't enough to get my name on the documents I helped create. When I was 27, my mother came to me with tears in her eyes. Your father's in trouble. The IRS is asking questions. We need you to co-sign some papers. Just a formality. Sign. 'Cause family helps family. 'Cause I trusted the people who raised me. 2 years later, those papers came back to haunt me. Loans I didn't know about. Debts attached to my name. Tax issues that somehow became my responsibility. You signed, their lawyer said, like that explained everything. Like my signature was permission to ruin my life. I tried to fight it. Tried to explain that I didn't know what I was signing, that they told me it was just a formality. Ignorance isn't a legal defense, the lawyer said with a smile that cost more than my monthly rent. So I paid. Again. Always paying. Marcus finally left when the money ran out. Didn't even have the decency to break up with me in person. Just a text message at 3 in the morning. This isn't working. You've changed. Had changed. I'd gone from financially stable to drowning in debt. From confident to constantly anxious. From believing in love to understanding it as a transaction I always lost. My family's response. Well, at least now you can focus on helping us. Helping them meant more co-signing. More emergency loans. More of my paychecks disappearing into their problems. I worked 2 jobs. Slept 4 hours a night. Ate ramen because it was cheap and I could make it last. My apartment was a studio with a leaking ceiling and neighbors who fought loud enough to count as free entertainment. But I kept showing up. Kept paying. Kept believing that eventually, they'd see how much I sacrificed. They just didn't care. The breaking point came on a Tuesday. Nothing special about the day. No dramatic music or warning signs. I was at the grocery store. Normal trip. Just basics, eggs, bread, coffee. The total was $32. My card declined. The cashier tried again. Declined. I tried my credit card. Declined. The woman behind me sighed loud enough to feel like a slap. I checked my banking app right there in line, my hands shaking. My account was empty. Completely drained. A transfer I didn't authorize. To my mother's account. I called her from the parking lot, sitting in my car that barely ran, surrounded by groceries I couldn't buy. Mom, did you take money from my account? Oh, that. Her voice was casual, like she was talking about borrowing a sweater. I needed it for the mortgage. You understand. I have $17 to my name. I can't even buy food. Don't be dramatic, Sienna. Family takes care of each other. That's when something inside me cracked. Not broke. Breaking implies damage. This was different. This was clarity. No, I said. My voice steady. Cold. You take care of yourselves. I'm done. Hung up. Closed the bank account that day. Opened a new one they couldn't access. I decided right there in that grocery store parking lot, surrounded by the smell of exhaust and the sound of shopping carts rattling, that the bill stops here. Chapter 3. The diner had a neon sign that flickered like it was trying to send Morse code. From apostrophes. Except the apostrophe stayed dark, so it just said Sam's. Like the place belonged to multiple people named Sam, all of them too tired to fix the sign. I sat in a booth by the window 3 days after that courtroom disaster. The vinyl seat had a crack that pinched the back of my thigh. The coffee tasted like it was brewed sometime last week and reheated every day since. I didn't care. It was hot and cheap and nobody here knew my name. Rain hit the window in waves, turning the street outside into a blur of headlights and brake lights. The sound was almost peaceful. Almost. Inside my head, the noise was deafening. The waitress, a woman probably in her 60s with a name tag that said Dottie, refilled my cup without asking. "You okay, honey?" "Fine," I lied. She looked at me the way people do when they know you're lying but are too polite or too tired to push. "Sure you are." I wrapped my hands around the mug, letting the heat bite into my palms, focusing on the pain because it was simpler than focusing on everything else. That courtroom kept playing in my head on repeat. My mother's eye roll. My father's silence. The judge's words. "You've been erased." How does someone get erased? How do you go from existing to not existing without even realizing it's happening? I thought about all those papers I signed. All those times they said, "Just a formality." All those moments I trusted people who saw me as a signature, not a daughter. My apartment wasn't much better than the diner. I got home around 9, the rain still coming down like the sky had personal problems it needed to work through. The building was old. The kind where the stairs creaked loud enough to announce you're coming home. Where the hallway smelled like someone's cooking from 3 days ago mixed with carpet that gave up on being cleaned sometime in the 90s. My studio was on the 3rd floor. One room that tried to be a bedroom, living room, and kitchen all at once and failed at all 3. The ceiling had a water stain shaped like Florida. The heater clanked like it was angry about having to work. I dumped my bag on the floor, kicked off my shoes and just stood there. The silence pressed in from all sides. Not the peaceful kind of quiet. The heavy kind. The kind that makes you aware of your own breathing, your own heartbeat, your own thoughts you can't outrun. Cold laundry sat in a basket I hadn't folded in a week. Takeout containers stacked near the sink because taking out the trash felt like too much effort. My bed wasn't made. Hadn't been made in days. I walked to the window, looked out at the rain. Somewhere out there my family was going on with their lives. Probably at dinner. Probably laughing. Probably not thinking about me at all. That hurt worse than anything Marcus ever did. Physical pain ends. This kind of pain just sits there, cold and permanent like a scar on the inside of your chest. I couldn't sleep that night. Just lay there staring at the ceiling, at that Florida-shaped stain, wondering how many other people in this building were lying awake dealing with their own disasters. Around 2 in the morning I gave up on sleep. Made myself more terrible coffee. Sat at my tiny kitchen table that wobbled because one leg was shorter than the others. That's when I noticed the box. It was shoved under my bed, half hidden behind shoes I never wore and a gym bag I'd bought with good intentions that died after one use. I didn't remember putting it there. Didn't remember packing it. But there it was, covered in dust like it had been waiting. I pulled it out, set it on the table. Cardboard, old, the kind that gets soft at the corners. Someone had written "important" on the side in marker that had faded to almost nothing. Inside was chaos. Old bills, receipts, random papers from years ago. Stuff I must have thrown together during one move or another, meaning to organize later and never getting around to it. But underneath all that was an envelope. Heavy. The kind that makes your stomach drop because nothing good ever comes in an envelope that's serious. No name on it. No return address. Just sealed with tape that had yellowed with time. I held it up to the light like that would give me X-ray vision. Like I could see through it and decide whether opening it was worth the risk. My hands shook. Not from cold. From something deeper. Some instinct that knew once I opened this, things would change. I thought about leaving it. Shoving it back in the box, putting the box back under the bed, pretending I never found it. But I'd been pretending for too long. Pretending the bruises didn't hurt. Pretending the debts weren't crushing me. Pretending my family loved me more than they loved my usefulness. I was done pretending. I tore open the envelope. When I finished, she sat back in her chair and studied me for a long moment. "This is bad," she finally said. My heart sank. "I know. No." She leaned forward. "You don't understand. This is bad for them. This is a prosecutable case of fraud, identity theft, and tax evasion. Your family didn't just erase you. They weaponized your identity." Blink. "You believe me." "Believe me." Nina's eyebrows went up. "I don't need to believe you. The numbers believe you. And numbers don't care about family dynamics or who's lying. They just don't." She pulled my papers closer, started scanning through them with the speed of someone who'd seen this pattern before. "Look at this." She pointed to a bank statement. "Transfer out on the 15th. Same day every month. Always the same amount. That's not random. That's systematic." She grabbed another paper. "And here. This signature. It's close to yours, but the pressure points are wrong. Someone forged this. Probably your father based on the slant. My throat got tight. Hearing someone else say it out loud made it real in a way it hadn't been before. Nina kept going, pulling papers, making notes, building connections I couldn't see, but she mapped like a puzzle she'd solved 100 times. They used your social security number to open accounts. That's identity theft. They signed your name to loan documents. That's forgery. They reported income under your name but kept the money. That's fraud. She looked up at me. Your family committed multiple felonies. And they did it over years, which makes it worse. Can we prove it? My voice came out smaller than I wanted. Nina's expression shifted. Not quite a smile, but close. The look of someone who just accepted a challenge they knew they could win. Can we prove it? Sienna, they already proved it for us. They documented everything. Every transfer, every forged signature, every fake account. They kept records because they never thought you'd fight back. She stood up, walked to her bookshelf, pulled down a binder labeled Tax Fraud Cases 2020 to 2023. Here's what we're going to do. First, we're going to build a timeline. Every transaction, every document, every moment they used your name without permission. We're going to create a story so clear that even the most skeptical judge will see it. He turned back to me. Second, we're going to contact the IRS. That investigation they mentioned. Still active. I checked before you got here. They're waiting for cooperation that your family never provided. You checked. I stared at her. How? I have contacts. And I believe in doing research before meetings. She sat back down. Third, we're going to freeze their assets before they can move anything else. Emergency court order. It'll take a few days, but we can do it. I felt something unfamiliar rising in my chest. Not quite hope. I didn't trust hope anymore. But something close. Something that felt like maybe, just maybe, I wasn't alone in this. Why are you helping me? Yes. I mean, I'm paying you, but this seems personal for you. Nina was quiet for a moment. Then she said, you want to know the truth. I see this all the time. Families destroying each other over money. Parents stealing from kids. Siblings stabbing each other in the back. And it's always the quietest one who gets hurt the worst. The one who trusted. The one who stayed loyal. She met my eyes. I was that quiet one once. My father did something similar. Not as elaborate, but similar. Took years to fix. So yeah, it's personal. Because people like your family think they can get away with it. And they usually do, because their victims are too tired or too scared or too broke to fight back. I'm all three of those things, I admitted. I know. Nina's voice was firm. But you're also here. You found the evidence. You're ready to fight. That's more than most people manage. She pulled out a fresh legal pad, clicked her pen. Now, let's start from the beginning. I need every detail you can remember. Every paper you signed. Every conversation about money. Every time they asked you to help with business stuff. We're going to build a case so tight they won't be able to breathe. We worked for 4 hours straight. Nina asked questions I didn't even think were relevant. What time of day did you usually sign papers? Who else was in the room? Did they rush you or give you time to read? Every answer mattered. Every detail was another brick in the wall we were building. By the time we finished, the sun was setting outside. The office had gotten darker without me noticing. Nina leaned back, stretched her neck. Okay, I have enough to start. I'm filing for the freeze order tomorrow morning. In the meantime, I need you to do something for me. Anything. Stop talking to your family. Complete silence. They're going to try to contact you. They're going to feel the pressure once we start moving. They'll call, text, show up at your apartment. Do not engage. Do not explain. Just silence. That won't be hard, I said. They haven't tried to contact me since the courtroom. Nina's expression darkened. They will. Once they realize you're not rolling over. Once they understand you have a lawyer and evidence. They'll come running with apologies and threats and everything in between. She walked me to the door, handed me her card. Call me if anything happens. Day or night. I mean it. I took the card, felt the weight of it. Just paper, but it felt like more. Like a shield I didn't have before. As I turned to leave, Nina said something that stopped me. Sienna, they didn't just erase you. They replaced you. Turned you into a character in their story that they could control. Now we're going to write a different ending. Chapter 6. Nina called me at 7 in the morning, 3 days after our meeting. I was half asleep, tangled in sheets that smelled like I needed to do laundry. We found something, she said. No greeting. Just straight to it. I sat up so fast my head spun. What? Get to my office. Now. 20 minutes later, I was back in that 7th floor office, still wearing yesterday's jeans and a hoodie I grabbed off the floor. Nina was already at her desk, surrounded by what looked like twice as many papers as before. Her computer screen glowed with spreadsheets that made my eyes hurt just looking at them. Numbers everywhere. Columns and rows that meant nothing to me but clearly meant everything to her. Sit, she said, not looking up. Her fingers moved across the keyboard like she was playing piano. I've been digging into the digital trail. Old hard drives, backup servers, deleted files they thought were gone forever. How did you get access to all that? Nina finally looked at me. You hired me. That means I have legal authority to request documentation related to fraud investigation. Your family's IT guy wasn't exactly a genius about security. Most people aren't. She turned her screen toward me. Look at this. It was an email. The timestamp said 3 years ago. From my father to my mother. Subject line. Sienna problem. My stomach dropped even before I started reading. She's asking too many questions about the business structure. We need to move faster on the reorganization. Make sure her name isn't anywhere near the new contracts. If the IRS comes sniffing, we need distance. My mother's response was even worse. Already handled. Talk to the lawyer. She's classified as volunteer help, not employee. No paper trail connecting her to ownership. And I moved those accounts like you asked. She won't find them. Nina pulled up another email. Then another. A whole chain of them, spanning years, documenting every step of my erasure like they were planning a vacation. Get rid of her signature authority. Make sure she doesn't see the real numbers. Keep her busy with small stuff so she doesn't notice the big moves. My hands were shaking. Not from fear. From rage so pure it felt like electricity in my veins. There's more, Nina said quietly. She pulled up a deleted spreadsheet. This is the real accounting. The one they kept hidden. Look at this column. She pointed to a list of payments. Monthly. Always the same amount. Next to each payment was a note. S contribution or S work, or sometimes just S. They tracked every single thing you did for the business, Nina explained. Every hour you worked, every idea you contributed, every client you brought in. They calculated your value down to the dollar. The numbers were huge. Hundreds of thousands over the years. Then look at this column. Nina scrolled right. This is what they paid you. The column was empty. Zeros all the way down. They knew exactly what you were worth, Nina said, her voice hard. They documented it. They just never planned to pay you. I couldn't speak. Couldn't breathe. The betrayal was so complete, so calculated, that words felt useless. Nina pulled up another document. This is the best part. Or the worst, depending how you look at it. It's a group chat. Your parents, your brother, and their lawyer. The messages were brutal in their casualness. Brother. What if Sienna finds out? Father. She won't. She trusts us. Mother. And if she does, who's going to believe her? We have all the papers. She has nothing. Lawyer. Exactly. Even if she tried to sue, she'd need evidence. And all the evidence says she was never officially involved. Brother. Oh. She's so dumb. That last message hit different. My little brother. The one I bailed out of jail twice. The one whose college I helped pay for. Calling me dumb. Nina must have seen my face because she said, Don't let them make you feel stupid. You trusted people you should have been able to trust. That's not dumb. That's human. She pulled up one more email. This one was recent. 2 weeks ago. After the courtroom scene. Father to mother. She actually showed up. I thought she'd be too embarrassed. Mother to father. Doesn't matter. Without proof she's got nothing. Let her make a fool of herself. Father. The lawyer says if she keeps pushing, we can countersue for defamation. Make her pay for all this trouble. I stood up, walked to the window, stared down at the street 7 floors below. People walking to work, carrying coffee, living normal lives where their families didn't plot their destruction in group chats. How do people do this? Asked my voice raw. How do you look someone in the eye, tell them you love them, then destroy them behind their back? Nina didn't answer right away. When she did, her voice was softer than I'd heard before. Because they convinced themselves you deserved it. That you were less than them. That your pain didn't count. People can justify anything if they need to. I turned back to face her. So what do we do with all this? Nina's sharp expression returned. Professional. Focused. We build a timeline. Every email, every deleted file, every manipulated spreadsheet. We show the pattern. Not just that they erased you but that they planned it. Documented it. Celebrated it. She started pulling papers, organizing them into piles. See, most fraud cases are messy. People panic, destroy evidence, make mistakes. But your family. They were so confident you'd never fight back that they kept everything. Every email. Every chat. Every calculation of how much they were stealing from you. That's good for us. That's perfect for us. Nina looked up, and for the first time since I met her she smiled. Not a big smile. Just a small, satisfied curve of her mouth. Because now we have something better than your word against theirs. We have their own words. In writing. With timestamps and metadata that prove authenticity. She pulled out her phone, typed something quick. I'm sending all of this to my contact at the IRS. This isn't just about you anymore. This is tax fraud, identity theft, conspiracy. Federal crimes with federal consequences. My phone buzzed. A text from a number I didn't recognize. Stop what you're doing. This is family business. Don't make this worse than it needs to be. We can talk. Just call me Dad. I showed Nina. She read it, her expression unchanged. Block the number. They're panicking. That means they know something's happening. How would they know? My contact at the IRS probably reached out for preliminary questions. Standard procedure when new evidence surfaces. Your family's lawyer would have gotten the call. Another text came through. My mother this time. Sienna, please. You're tearing this family apart. Whatever you think happened, you're wrong. Let's meet and talk about this like adults. Then my brother. Seriously. You're really going to destroy us over money. We're family. Nina watched me stare at my phone as the messages kept coming. What did I tell you? Don't engage. Right. They're going to try everything. Guilt, anger, promises. It's a cycle. Abusers always go through it when they lose control. I blocked all 3 numbers. Felt good. Like closing doors that should have been locked years ago. Nina gathered all the documents we'd reviewed, put them in a folder labeled with my case number. I'm filing the freeze order today. Tomorrow at the latest. Once that goes through, they can't move money, can't sell assets, can't do anything financial without court approval. What will that do to them? Make them desperate. Nina handed me the folder. Keep this somewhere safe. Not your apartment. Maybe a friend's house or a safety deposit box. These are copies, but I want you to have them. I took the folder, felt the weight of it. Evidence. Proof. Power. As I walked to the door, Nina called out. Sienna. Turn. That email your brother sent. Where he called you dumb. She was looking at her computer screen, that small smile back. I found his bank records. He's been getting monthly payments from your parents. $1,500 a month for the last 5 years. For doing absolutely nothing. She looked up at me. You weren't the dumb one. You were just the one they couldn't buy. I left the office with that folder under my arm and a message on my phone from another unknown number. I almost didn't open it, but something made me look. Make sure she never sees a cent. She's already gone. It was a screenshot from that group chat Nina showed me. Sent to me by someone whose number I didn't recognize. Below the screenshot was a message. Thought you should see this. I'm sorry I didn't speak up sooner. Angela. My father's secretary. The one who always smiled at me when I came to the office. The one who probably saw everything. Chapter 7. The freeze order came through on a Thursday morning. Nina called me at 9:30, and I could hear the satisfaction in her voice. It's done. As of 30 minutes ago, your family can't access any accounts connected to the business. Can't sell property. Can't transfer funds. Everything's frozen until the court sorts this out. I was at work, in the bathroom stall where I'd been hiding for the last 20 minutes trying not to cry. My job at the call center was mind-numbing, but at least nobody there knew my story. I was just another voice answering complaints about cable bills. What happens now? I whispered, phone pressed to my ear. Now they panic. Now their lawyers scramble. And now we wait for them to make a move. Nina paused. Are you somewhere safe? I'm at work. Why? Because they're going to lose their minds when they find out. And desperate people do stupid things. She was right. By noon, I had 17 missed calls from my father. 23 from my mother. My brother left a voicemail so angry I could barely understand the words through his yelling. I didn't listen to all of it. Just enough to hear him call me words I won't repeat and threaten to make me regret this. Nina told me to save everything. Every call, every voicemail, every text. It's all evidence of harassment, she said. They're building our case for us. The really scary one came at 2 in the afternoon. My father showed up at my apartment building. I wasn't home, thank God. But my neighbor, Mrs. Chen, called me. She was 70-something, nosy in the way that makes you grateful because it means someone's watching out. Sienna, there's a man here banging on your door. Says he's your father. Should I call the police? My heart hammered. Yes, please. He's yelling that you stole from him, that you're a liar. He's making a scene in the hallway. I heard banging in the background through the phone. My father's voice, loud and angry. I know you're in there, Sienna. Open this door. We need to talk. I'm calling 911, Mrs. Chen said and hung up. Called Nina immediately. She answered on the first ring. My father's at my apartment. I know. The court clerk just called me. They tried to access their accounts and couldn't. Your father went straight to the bank, made a scene there too. Security escorted him out. What do I do? Stay wherever you are. Don't go home until the police clear it. And if he contacts you directly, do not respond. Let him dig his own grave. The police did clear it. They made my father leave, warned him about trespassing, and wrote up a report. Mrs. Chen gave a statement about the threats he made through my door. That report became evidence. That night, I stayed in a cheap motel near work. The kind with a flickering sign and a bed that felt like cardboard. But it was safe. Anonymous. Nobody knew where I was. I lay there, staring at the water-stained ceiling, wondering how we got here. How the people who raised me became strangers who'd rather threaten me than face what they'd done. My phone buzzed. Text from my mother. She'd found a way past the block, probably using someone else's phone. Please, Sienna. You're killing your father. The stress is destroying him. He could have a heart attack. Do you want that on your conscience? Guilt. The oldest weapon in the abuse playbook. For a second, just a second, I almost responded. Almost let the old patterns take over. Almost believed that I was the problem. Then I remembered that email. Make sure she never sees a cent. She's already gone. I deleted the text. Another message came through. We gave you everything. Raised you. Fed you. Loved you. And this is how you repay us. By destroying us. Delete. You're going to regret this. When you're old and alone and we're all gone, you'll regret pushing away the only family you have. Delete. The messages kept coming. Different numbers. Same guilt. Same manipulation. I turned off my phone and lay in the dark, listening to trucks on the highway, to voices in other rooms, to the hum of the ice machine down the hall. But I also felt something else. Something lighter. Like cutting strings I didn't know were attached. The hearing was set for the following Tuesday. Emergency proceeding to review the freeze order and hear both sides. Nina prepped me for 3 days straight. What to say, what not to say, how to handle cross-examination, how to stay calm when my family was in the same room. They're going to try to rattle you, she warned. They'll stare at you, whisper about you, maybe even try to approach you during breaks. Don't engage. Don't even make eye contact. You're there to tell the truth, not to manage their feelings. The morning of the hearing I threw up twice. Couldn't eat breakfast. Could barely keep water down. Nina met me outside the courthouse at 8. She was in a dark suit, carrying a briefcase that looked like it weighed more than I did. You ready? She asked. No. Good. People who think they're ready usually aren't. She handed me a folder. Your copy of everything. If you get confused or nervous, look down at this. Remember what they did. Let that fuel you. We walked into the courthouse together. Through metal detectors. Up 3 flights of stairs because the elevator was broken. Down a hallway that smelled like old building and recycled air. The courtroom was smaller than the first one. More intimate. Which meant nowhere to hide. My family was already there. My father in a suit that looked expensive. My mother in pearls and a dress that screamed, respectable woman. My brother slouched in a chair like he'd rather be anywhere else. Their lawyer was a man who looked like he cost more per hour than I made in a week. Slicked back hair, tan that came from a salon, watch that probably cost more than my car. He was talking to my father, gesturing with his hands, probably explaining strategy. Then my mother saw me. Her face went through about 5 emotions in 2 seconds. Surprise, anger, hurt, and finally something cold and hard. She leaned over to my father, whispered something. He looked up, saw me, and his expression darkened. I looked away, focused on Nina. On the folder in my hands. On anything except the people who raised me and then erased me. All rise, the bailiff called. The judge entered. Different judge this time. A woman, maybe 60, with gray hair and eyes that looked like they'd seen every lie people could tell. Be seated, she said, her voice firm. We're here regarding case number 2025-847, Roe Business Accounts Freeze Order. Let's begin. Nina stood. Your Honor, we're here because my client, Sienna Roe, has been the victim of systematic fraud, identity theft, and financial abuse by her own family. The freeze order was necessary to prevent further asset movement while we investigate the extent of the damage. The opposing lawyer stood. Your Honor, this is a family dispute being weaponized through the court system. Ms. Roe has no standing to make these claims. She was never an official partner in the business, never an employee, and has no legal right to these accounts. The judge looked at me. Really looked. Like she was trying to see past the surface to the truth underneath. Ms. Roe, you're representing yourself in this matter? I stood, my legs shaking. No, Your Honor. Nina Calder is my attorney. And you're alleging fraud against your parents and brother? Yes, Your Honor. That's a serious allegation. I have evidence, Your Honor. The judge leaned back. Then let's see it. Nina opened her briefcase like she was opening a treasure chest. Started pulling out documents, organizing them on the table. Emails, spreadsheets, bank statements, contracts. The whole history of my erasure laid out in paper form. Your Honor, we have emails documenting deliberate planning to remove Ms. Roe from business ownership. We have spreadsheets showing they tracked her contributions but never compensated her. We have forged signatures on loan documents. We have accounts opened using her identity without permission. She handed a stack to the bailiff, who passed them to the judge. And most importantly, we have communications showing they knew the IRS was investigating and deliberately kept Ms. Rowe in the dark to use her as a scapegoat. My father's lawyer jumped up. Objection. These documents were obtained without. Without what? Nina cut him off. Without permission from people committing fraud. Ms. Rowe has legal right to documentation involving her identity and her claimed contributions to the business. The judge held up a hand. I'll review the evidence and determine admissibility. She started reading, her expression neutral. The courtroom was silent except for the sound of pages turning. My mother kept glancing at me, then looking away. My brother was on his phone until the judge told him to put it away. My father just stared straight ahead, his jaw tight. Finally, the judge looked up. Mr. Rowe, did you sign your daughter's name to loan documents without her knowledge? My father's lawyer leaned over, whispered something. My father cleared his throat. I may have signed on her behalf, but she knew about it. She agreed. Do you have proof of her agreement? Silence. Written authorization. Verbal agreement with witnesses. More silence. The judge flipped through more papers. And these emails, where you discuss removing her from ownership documentation. Where you calculate her contributions but pay her nothing. Where you coordinate keeping IRS investigation details from her. You wrote these. My father's face was red now. Those are taken out of context. What context make sure she never sees a cent acceptable? The judge's voice was sharp now, cutting through the courtroom like a blade. My mother spoke up, her voice shaking. Your Honor, this is our daughter. We love her. This is just a misunderstanding. The judge looked at her. Mrs. Rowe, I've been doing this for 25 years. I know what love looks like in families. And I know what abuse looks like. She held up the stack of papers. This isn't love. This is calculated financial abuse. She turned to the lawyers. The freeze order stands. In fact, I'm expanding it. All Rowe family accounts, business and personal, are frozen pending full forensic audit. My father stood up. You can't do that. Sit down, Mr. Rowe, or I'll hold you in contempt. The judge's voice was ice. We'll recess for 30 days. During that time, Ms. Calder will work with court-appointed auditors to determine the full extent of the fraud. Then we'll reconvene for a full hearing. She slammed her gavel. Court is adjourned. Chapter 8. The next hearing was 4 weeks later. For weeks that felt like 4 years. Nina spent that time buried in documents with the court auditors. I spent it looking over my shoulder, jumping at every noise, screening every call. My family tried everything. Showed up at my work until my boss threatened to call the police. Sent letters to my apartment. Had relatives I barely knew reach out on social media with messages about tearing the family apart. One aunt wrote, "Your grandmother would be ashamed of you." My grandmother died when I was 10. I barely remembered her. But they were willing to use even her memory as a weapon. The auditors found everything. Every hidden account. Every fake transaction. Every dollar they stole or moved or hid. The number was staggering. Over $700,000 that should have been mine based on my documented contributions. $700,000 they took and pretended never existed. Nina showed me the full report 2 days before the hearing. We sat in her office, now familiar, and she walked me through 50 pages of financial crimes. They're going to try to settle, she said. The report is devastating. Any judge who sees this will rule in your favor, possibly with criminal referrals. Their lawyer knows it. They know it. What if I don't want to settle? Nina looked at me. That's your choice. But court battles are long, expensive, and emotionally draining. A settlement gets you compensation, gets you closure, and gets you out. Will they face consequences? The IRS will handle the tax fraud regardless. That's criminal, not civil. You can't control that. But for the personal stuff, the identity theft, the forgery, those charges would require you to pursue them separately. Thought about it. Thought about more years in courtrooms. More lawyers. More seeing their faces across rooms while strangers decided what justice looked like. If they settle, do they have to admit what they did? Nina nodded. We can require acknowledgement of wrongdoing as part of the agreement. They won't like it, but they'll agree if the alternative is worse. The night before the hearing I couldn't sleep. Paced my apartment, stared out the window at the city lights. Thought about all the versions of my life that could have been. If I'd never helped with the business. If I'd never trusted them. If I'd left sooner, fought back sooner, seen the truth sooner. But you can't live in if-onlys. You can only live in what-nows. And right now I had power, evidence, an ally who believed me, a chance at justice that most people in my position never get. That had to be enough. The courtroom was packed this time. Not with supporters, I didn't have those. But with lawyers, auditors, a court reporter, and a stenographer. Official, real, heavy with consequence. My family looked different, smaller somehow. My father had lost weight, his suit hanging loose. My mother's makeup couldn't quite hide the circles under her eyes. My brother just looked angry, arms crossed, glaring at everything. The judge entered. Same one as before. She had that stack of papers in front of her. The audit report. We're here for the continuation of case 2025-847. I've reviewed the forensic audit. I've reviewed the additional evidence. I've reviewed everything. She looked at my family's lawyer. Counselor, I understand you have a proposal. He stood, adjusted his tie. Your Honor, my clients would like to propose a settlement. In the interest of family healing and avoiding prolonged litigation, they're prepared to offer compensation to Ms. Rowe. The judge looked at Nina. Ms. Calder. Nina stood. We're willing to hear the offer, Your Honor. For the next hour they negotiated. Back and forth. Numbers and terms and conditions. I sat there feeling like I was watching my life get bargained over like a used car. Finally Nina turned to me. They're offering full restitution based on the audit findings. $700,000 plus interest. They'll acknowledge wrongdoing in writing. They'll cooperate with the IRS investigation. And they'll agree to no contact. No contact. Yes. Means they can't reach out to you. Can't come to your home or work. If they want to communicate, it goes through lawyers. Forever. I looked across the courtroom at my father. He was staring at the table, jaw tight. My mother was crying quietly, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue that looked practiced. My brother was still glaring. None of them looked at me. Not once during the whole negotiation. And that's when I realized they'd never really seen me. Not as a daughter, not as a person. Just as a resource they could use until I ran out. I have one condition, I said. Nina raised her eyebrows. What? I wanted in writing that they admit every single thing they did. Not vague language. Specific admissions. Identity theft. Forgery. Fraud. Everything. The opposing lawyer sputtered. That's essentially a confession that could be used in criminal proceedings. Then they shouldn't have committed crimes, I said, my voice steady. If they want this settled, they admit everything. Or we can let the IRS and the state prosecutor's office handle it from here. Nina was trying not to smile. The judge was definitely trying not to smile. My father's lawyer had a frantic whispered conversation with my parents. I watched my father's face go through calculations. Pride versus consequences. Image versus prison. Fine, the lawyer finally said. We accept the condition. The judge nodded. Then let's get this in writing. Both parties will return tomorrow morning to sign the settlement agreement. Court is adjourned. As we filed out, my mother tried to approach me. Sienna, please. Her lawyer grabbed her arm, pulled her back. No contact. You just agreed to that. She stopped, and for a second I saw something in her face. Maybe regret. Maybe just regret that she got caught. I walked past her, past all of them, out into the courthouse hallway where the air felt cleaner somehow. Nina put a hand on my shoulder. You did good. Doesn't feel like winning. It never does when it's family. But you got justice. That's more than most people get. We walked out into afternoon sunshine that felt too bright for the heaviness I was carrying. What happens now? Yes. Now we draft the settlement agreement. Tomorrow you sign it. Then you start rebuilding. And the IRS. Nina's expression hardened. The IRS does what the IRS does. Your family will be dealing with federal tax fraud charges regardless of our settlement. That's out of your hands. Out of their hands too. Thought about that. About the bill they'd been running from finally coming due. About consequences they couldn't negotiate away. Good, I said. We stood on the courthouse steps, and Nina pulled out her phone, typed something quick. I'm sending you names of therapists who specialize in family trauma. You're going to need someone to help you process all this. I'm fine. You're not. And that's okay. What you went through, what they did, that leaves scars. Get help dealing with them. I took the names, saved them in my phone. Maybe I'd call. Maybe not. But having them felt like having options. That night I sat in my apartment. My safe, quiet apartment that nobody could violate anymore. I thought about the woman I used to be. The one who paid their bills and made excuses. The one who wore long sleeves and pretended everything was fine. The one who believed love meant sacrifice without reciprocation. She was gone. Erased, just like they tried to erase her legally. But something new was in her place. Something harder, sharper, but also freer. I looked at my phone. At all those blocked numbers. At all those deleted messages. At all that silence where chaos used to be. And I slept better than I had in years. Chapter 9. The settlement signing happened in a conference room that smelled like coffee and air conditioning that worked too hard. Neutral territory. Nobody's courthouse or office. Just beige walls and a table and pens that would sign away a decade of lies. My family was already there when Nina and I arrived. Sitting on their side of the table like we were negotiating a business deal instead of the destruction of what used to be a family. The settlement was 20 pages long. Legal language that translated to, they admit they destroyed me, they pay for it, and they disappear from my life forever. The lawyer slid copies across the table. If you'll review pages 12 through 14, that's where the acknowledgement of wrongdoing is detailed. I flipped to it. Started reading. The undersigned parties acknowledge and admit to the following actions against Sienna Marie Rowe. Unauthorized use of her identity to open financial accounts. Forged signatures on loan documents. Deliberate omission of her name from business ownership documentation despite significant contributions. Calculated efforts to avoid compensation for services rendered. Use of her name and social security number without consent for purposes of tax liability transfer. It went on for 2 pages. Every crime spelled out in black and white. Their signatures at the bottom would make it permanent. My father's hand shook when he picked up the pen. My mother was crying again, but quieter this time, like she'd run out of energy for performance tears. My brother signed without reading it. His jaw tight, his movements sharp. Then it was my turn. Nina handed me a pen. Expensive, heavy, the kind that felt important in your hand. I looked at my family across that table one last time. Really looked. And saw strangers. People who shared my DNA but not my values. People who taught me what family shouldn't be. I signed my name. Clear, confident, permanent. One more thing, I said before anyone could move. The lawyer looked up. The settlement is complete. This isn't about the settlement. I pulled a folded paper from my bag. Something I'd written last night when I couldn't sleep. This is for them. I slid it across the table. My father picked it up, unfolded it, started reading. The article didn't mention me. Didn't mention the family drama. Just the numbers and the charges and the potential consequences. Can you believe people do that? The woman next to me said, reading over my shoulder. Steal from the government, then act shocked when they get caught? I almost laughed. Almost said, actually, I know them. They stole from me too. Instead, I just nodded. Yeah, wild. Because my story wasn't for strangers in coffee shops. It was mine. Private. Protected. I'd spent years having my story written by other people. Now I got to decide who heard it and how. That felt like power. 2 months later, Nina called with an update. The kind of update that feels like an ending even though it's really just another chapter. They took a plea deal. Your father, your mother, your brother. Pled guilty to tax fraud. Agreed to pay restitution, fines, and penalties. Your father got 2 years probation and community service. Your mother got 1 year probation. Your brother got a fine because he was less involved. I was at work. A new job, better pay, using skills I'd forgotten I had. I stepped into the hallway where it was quieter. No prison. Rarely happens in first-time white-collar cases unless the amount is massive or someone gets hurt. The government wants their money more than they want to house inmates. Your family will be paying this off for years. How much? With fines and interest. Just under 3 million. 3 million. The number echoed in my head. They'll lose the business, Nina continued. Can't operate under those conditions. Probably have to sell the house too. Bankruptcy is likely. I waited for satisfaction. For vindication. For some feeling that matched the size of their consequences. But what I felt was just tired. And maybe a little sad. Not for them. For the family we could have been if they'd chosen differently. Sienna. Nina's voice pulled me back. You there? Yeah. Just processing. How do you feel? Honestly. Like I can finally breathe. Like a weight I didn't realize I was still carrying just lifted. That's good. That's really good. We talked logistics for a few more minutes. The settlement was long closed, but she wanted to make sure I knew the case was truly over. That the legal part of my nightmare had ended. What will you do now? She asked before we hung up. Live. Live. Without looking over my shoulder. Without expecting disasters. Without carrying anyone's weight but my own. You deserve that. After work, I went home to my apartment that still felt too nice to be mine. Made dinner, actual cooking, not reheated takeout. Sat at my small table that didn't wobble because I'd bought furniture that worked. And I thought about the woman I used to be. The one who believed love meant sacrifice without boundaries. Who thought family was supposed to hurt sometimes. Who carried bruises like badges of loyalty. She'd been erased. Not by them but by me. Deliberately. Carefully. The way you delete a draft that isn't working and start fresh. The woman I was now. She was still figuring herself out. Still learning how to trust. Still waking up sometimes expecting disaster. But she was free. My phone lit up with a notification. That voicemail from my father. Still sitting there unheard after 2 months. I stared at it for a long moment. Thumb hovering over the delete button. Then I did something that surprised me. I sent it to my therapist. Yes, I'd called one of those names Nina gave me. Sent it with a message. Still don't want to listen. But keeping it feels like holding on to something that hurts. What do I do? She responded an hour later. Delete it. Not because he doesn't deserve to be heard, but because you don't deserve to carry the weight of his words. You've carried enough. So I deleted it. One click. And felt nothing. Which felt like everything. That night, I opened my laptop and started writing. Not for publication. Not for anyone else. Just for me. I wrote about the courtroom. About the declined card. About the diner and the envelope and Nina's sharp eyes seeing what everyone else missed. I wrote about being erased and choosing to exist anyway. I wrote about justice that isn't loud or dramatic. Justice that's just the quiet return of dignity. The restoration of identity. The courage to say enough. And I wrote this at the very end. For once, the bill wasn't mine. It was theirs. The IRS doesn't forget. Doesn't forgive. Doesn't care about your sob stories or your family name or how much you smile in court. The bill comes due. Always. But this story isn't about them anymore. It's about every person forced to pay bills they didn't sign up for. Every caretaker whose labor goes unrecognized. Every person pushed aside by a system designed to protect power and silence truth. Justice isn't always loud. Sometimes it's the quiet return of dignity. The restoration of identity. The calm courage to say, enough. I said enough. And I meant it. Now I'm building a life where the only bills I pay are my own. Where the only weight I carry is the kind that makes me stronger. Where family means people who see me, not people who use me. The declined card wasn't about being broke. It was about being free. And freedom, I've learned, is worth every penny they tried to steal. I saved the document. Backed it up. Put it somewhere safe. Maybe someday I'd share it. Maybe I wouldn't. Either way, it was mine. My story. My truth. My survival. And that was enough. I closed my laptop, turned off the lights, and lay in bed in my quiet apartment. No angry calls. No emergencies. No chaos. Just peace. And in the morning I'd wake up and keep building. Keep healing. Keep existing. Not despite what they did, but because of who I chose to become after they tried to erase me. The woman they couldn't buy. Couldn't break. Couldn't silence. The woman who learned that sometimes the strongest thing you can do is walk away from people who see you as currency instead of family. The woman who discovered that chosen family. Therapists who listen, lawyers who fight, neighbors who call police, secretaries who send screenshots. Matters more than blood. The woman who finally understood that love without respect isn't love at all. I am Sienna Rowe. And I exist. Not in their story. Mine. If this story moved you, if you've ever felt erased or used or silenced, you're not alone. Your story matters. Your survival matters. Your voice matters. Subscribe to this channel because stories like this need to be told. Turn on notifications so you don't miss the next story of quiet justice, of survival, of people who refuse to stay silent. And drop a comment. Tell me where you're watching from. Tell me your story if you're ready. Tell me what gave you the courage to say enough. Because every comment, every share, Every voice added to the chorus makes it harder for people like my family to keep getting away with it. Justice isn't always loud, but together we can make it impossible to ignore. Thank you for staying with me through this journey. Thank you for witnessing my story. Thank you for being part of the family that chose me when blood family failed. See you in the next story. And remember, you're stronger than the people who tried to break you. The bill always comes due. Make sure it's not yours to pay.